Hello and good day, everybody. I am Coach Jay, and I always like to start my classes with a corny dad joke. And today's is this: what do you call a hen that can add, subtract, and multiply? You call them a mathma chicken. All right, if you can take 2 deep breaths with me, in through the nose, out through the mouth, preferably with your eyes closed, but any way you feel, comfortable and safe. One more time. All right. Today, basically, there's new people watching these classes all the time. There's existing people that watch them, there's new people that watch them. So oftentimes I'm going to repeat some of the same information, and that's because if anybody new is watching these videos, they can get some of the information that maybe I said a while ago that for whatever reason, you didn't go back and look or what have you. So I'm going to be giving you a quick overview of some terms and other tips while on this emotional roller coaster that you may be on. Keeping in mind, some people are watching this while they're bear hugging the toilet, vomiting because they just found out some information. And some people are watching this after you're dealing with 30, 40, 50 years of trauma or betrayal. So this emotional journey and roller coaster is on a spectrum. If you're not currently familiar with some of these terms, certainly you will be while on this journey. Um, uh, there's going to be social media apps and websites and all this where people are having what do you call that, abbreviations like AP. You're like, well, what is an AP? Well, that's a fair partner. What is OW? So there's certain things that you might not know, and it's helpful to know just so you can read something with confidence and clarity. I want to say this is a club, and I know you know this. This is a club that no one ever wanted to join. Nobody has an interest in joining this club. But I do want to stress, if you look for the gifts while on this healing journey, I assure you, you will be astonished with some of the gifts that you take away. All right. So basically, in general, what is trauma? And I'm going to give you a more medical definition. I can give you the street definition of trauma. Just going to give you the more medical dictionary definition of exactly what trauma is. Trauma is an emotional response to a terrible event like an accident, a sexual violation, or a natural disaster. Immediately after the event, shock and denial are typical. Longer-term reactions include unpredictable emotions, flashbacks, strained relationships, and even physical symptoms like headaches or nausea, things like that. Betrayal trauma. I'm going to give you more of the layman's definition of betrayal trauma. It's simply life-changing or life-altering powerlessness at the hands of a primary attachment. So the clerk at the store who gives you less change back than you do, that's not betrayal trauma. It's betrayal trauma is somebody that you trust, that you have an emotional attachment and investment in. What is trauma-informed care? A framework of thinking and interventions that are directed by a thorough understanding of the profound neurological, biological, psychological, and social effects trauma has on the individual. I'll even add historical. Now, what does this mean? That means that so many times people that are rooted in a faith-based system, which I love, and I'm glad you are. However, so oftentimes they'll go to their priest, their father, their synagogue for direction after betrayal. And oftentimes because the pastor, the father, the priest, what have you, isn't trauma informed, you're getting information that could actually wind up being hurtful, not helpful. All right, what are triggers? Triggers, they're signals that act as a sign of possible danger based on historical traumatic experiences and which lead to a set of emotional, psychological, and behavioral responses that arise in the service of survival and safety. This could be anything. It could be sight, sound, smell, touch. I mean, people that have triggers can drive by something and see a place and your knees get weak. I mean, it's your body's fight or flight system kicks in as if you're repeating that same exact situation in the here and now. Triggers are all about one's perception, the perception experienced as reality. Because think about it, you're not in any harm immediately, but your body's perceiving that harm. It's associating and making our body feel as if that harm is imminent, is now. The mind-body connection sets in motion a fight, flight, or freeze response. A triggered individual experiences fear, panic, upset, and agitation. And this is why you could be out of trauma for years, even decades, and hear a noise, hear a song, smell something, and it brings you right back to that situation where you feel out of control, because that's what you felt like while you were going through the trauma, out of control. All right, trauma types. In general, there's three main classifications for trauma. Acute trauma, which results from exposure to a single overwhelming event. Examples could be like, rape, sudden death of a loved one, a natural disaster, when all of a sudden you're sitting there and, hurricane blows your window in and blows you outside and all the stuff in your house are rattled. That's acute trauma. I mean, it's in the moment, immediate. The characteristics of this are, detailed memories, omens, a hypervigilance, an exaggerated startle response, misperceptions, certainly overreactions. There's also chronic trauma. Some refer to this as CPTSD, complex post-traumatic stress disorder. This results from extended exposure to traumatizing situations. The examples could be prolonged exposure to violence or bullying, profound neglect, a series of home removals. A lot of times kids that are in foster homes have this because they go from home to home to home to home. And oftentimes if they're taken out of one home where there's any type of abuse, now the kids go into the next home and they're thinking, geez, am I going to be abused in this home? You're in a constant state of hypervigilance. Some of the characteristics of this are denial, psychological numbing, dissociation, rage, social withdrawal, a sense of foreshortened future. They don't think that they're going to either live long or be successful if they do. It makes life much more challenging. So that is, trauma may not only impact the individual who experienced it, it could also impact those around them. I always say that trauma is like lava. It just like lava, it kills everything in its path. And trauma in our body, if it doesn't get dealt with and released, it stays in our body. And what happens is, let's just say you dealt with betrayal trauma and the affair partner wore blue. Well, if you don't deal with that, the next thing you know is everybody who wears blue, you don't trust. You go to the hospital, you see nurses and doctors in blue, you don't trust them. You still don't deal with this years later. Now you don't trust hospitals. Years later, you don't deal with this. Now you don't trust any information in the medical field. I mean, it just really has a ripple effect of those around you. That's a poor example, but hopefully you get what I mean about if you don't deal with what's going on inside, it's going to pour over on the outside and just get, bigger and wider. After a traumatic event, some have experienced what's called compassion fatigue, also known as "Are you serious?" Now, an example of this is, let's just say you coming home from the vet after having to put your favorite animal down, your favorite pet down, which could be traumatic. I mean, here this pet was with you for 20, 30 years or whatever, 19 years, and you put them down. You have to put them down at the vet's office and you're on your way home and you're just crying. And all of a sudden you get a call from a friend who's angry because her spouse didn't bring her Dunkin' Donuts at work. And you're thinking to myself, seriously? So that's compassion fatigue. Now, some of the characteristics of compassion fatigue are a reduced sense of efficacy at work. It's like, you just don't have the oomph to put in the day's work. You have difficulty with concentration and focus problems. You have apathy and emotional numbness, which is what I was saying before. This is the "are you serious" mode. Like, um, things people can tell you things about things they're going through, challenges, and you're like, okay, do you honestly think that's a big deal? I mean, you have a sense of apathy towards a lot. This can go into isolation and withdrawal. You just don't want to be around people. You don't want to see people. You don't want to interact with people. You just don't want to deal with them. You're exhausted. One of the reasons you're exhausted is because every organ and fiber in your body is working to heal. You're tired. You can get up out of bed after sleeping for 8 hours, get a drink of water, and you're ready to go back to sleep. You're just exhausted. Um, Possible jadedness, bitter, pessimism, and possibly secret addictions and self-medication. A lot of times, people get into after trauma, whether it's drugs or alcohol or sex or gambling, whatever it is to numb, distract, escape, cope with some of the trauma you're dealing with. Some tips, three maybe quick tips for preventing re-traumatization, because re-traumatization is unfortunately common after initial trauma, whether from other people because you lack boundaries or from yourself because, let's just say, you're either pain shopping or what have you. Number one, grow your skill of attunement. That is, develop your capacity and the capacity to read your body's cues and respond. You have to respond appropriately to these cues. Keep in mind, it's not the trigger or what people say or do necessarily that is the truth. It's our interpretation of them. A lot of times when I'm working with couples and there's been an infidelity, I'll ask the person who was victimized, if I don't like that word, but who the victim of this, what did your partner, what did your significant other, what did your spouse's infidelity say about you? And oftentimes they'll say, well, it made me feel unsafe, or it made me feel ugly, or it made me feel unprioritized. So keep in mind, that's the interpretation somebody gets, not necessarily what the intention was, what the truth is, but that's the interpretation. So it becomes our truth. And our truth is based on feelings a lot of times, or past experiences, not based on facts of the situation. So we got to go in there and do some, emotional and mental surgery. Anyways, I always try to say, look at people's intentions over their behavior. I also try to say, look at people's wounds over their behavior. Two, look for causes of behaviors. Try to seek to understand the function of behaviors and what behaviors are communicating. What you might view as frustrating behavior may be a coping mechanism attempt. If your response is not trauma-informed, it could play right into causing you to feel less safe and more disconnected. I can try to get into this a little bit more. But because of time, I just want to go on to number three, which is provide consistency, predictability, and choice-making opportunities. Keep in mind that trauma and betrayal, especially from those in our sacred circle, they rob us of our choices. They rob us of our choices because they didn't come to us and say, hey, listen, do you mind if I step out of our marriage? No, they just did it. Do you mind if I blur your boundaries? Do you mind if I disrespect you? Do you mind if I hurt? No, they just do it. They rob us of our choices, because if they were to give us choices, certainly we wouldn't have made those choices. We would have said no. So you have to empower yourself with the gift of choice in every way, in both the big and the small ways. And I'm telling you something, even when it comes down to taking a bath, I'm going to allow myself to take a nice bubble bath tonight at 7 o'clock. I'm going to allow myself tomorrow, Tuesday at 4 o'clock to go buy some bread. I'm going to allow myself to look for a brand new car to buy. You have to empower yourself with the gift of choices. Another thing I just wanted to mention is a few de-escalating strategies. Escalation, especially when you're the early stages of trauma or betrayal, very easy to get de-escalate or to get escalated or triggered. So I just want to give you a few strategies, tips, techniques that will help you calm yourself. Number one, listening to music. That's a biggie. Listening to some music. Number two, reading a newspaper or a book. one of the things you just want to do is you want to get out of amygdala mindset, which is the animal reptilian mindset, which is your emotional mind, and you want to engage your logic mind. So if you're listening to music, you're probably engaging your logic mind, especially if you're listening to the lyrics. If you're reading a book, you're engaging your logic side. Um, uh, Exercise, some grounding techniques, and there's a million grounding techniques. If I have time, I'll go over a few of them. Praying, if you're a person of faith, never underestimate the power of prayer. Meditating gets us, meditating helps us be mindful of what we're thinking of, which could be a double-edged sword, because if we're thinking of betrayal, you don't want to be mindful and stay on that, but you want to hopefully guide that into some more healthy thinking and be mindful of that. Watching TV, and I'm not talking about shows where it's all about betrayal and infidelity. Watching some healthy TV, preferably something funny. Talking to a trusted friend or family member. Now, underline trusted, because a lot of times people can get additionally hurt by telling people they're unsafe, things they shouldn't be sharing. Having your hand held or getting a hug from somebody, somebody you trust, and no words are spoken. You're just sitting there holding hands or getting a hug from somebody. Pounding on something, some clay, some getting a hammer and just breaking some things. I remember I have years ago when I was going through my stuff, I would put some cups. I had a lot of extra cups because I love getting cups at garage sales. And I had a lot of mugs, ceramic mugs that I just didn't use. And I remember putting them in a bag, and just taking a hammer and slamming them. And I would be talking out loud and screaming out loud and pretending the people that hurt me were inside that bag. So hit something, punch a pillow, write in your diary or journal. Writing in your diary or journaling gets all this crap that's up here in your head and gets it on paper. Playing a computer game if you want, or even games on a system if you have it. Using ice on your body. One of the suggestions I tell people is when you're dysregulated, put a piece of ice in your hand, or better yet, put 2 pieces of ice in both your hands. It's very difficult to stay in a state of, I can't believe they did this to me, when your hands are very cold. Breathing exercises. Breathing exercises calms your heartbeat. Your heartbeat tells your body all is good in the hood. When your body feels all is good in the hood, it talks to your brain. This is interoception and introception. Putting your hands under water, running water, does something similar to ice. Laying down with a cold washcloth on your face, that will relax you. That will give you also that cold feeling. Hopefully setting your mind back to logic state mind. Wrapping up in a blanket. This could be a weighted blanket, preferably. Volunteer, help somebody else in need. Nothing will reposition your mindset, especially if you're in the woe is me thing, intentionally or unintentionally, as helping somebody get out of their own funk. You help somebody get out of their funk, it's going to absolutely jumpstart helping you get out of yours. Sing. Force a smile. Sometimes I say you have to fake it till you make it. Man, you could be sitting there livid or angry or sad. Force a smile. That'll tell your brain, well, wait a minute, maybe not all is bad. Chew some gum. It's very hard to chew some gum and let your body think you're in danger, because if you go back to like the hunter-gatherer days, if you're being chased by a wild animal, but yet you're sitting down and you're chewing something, your body's like, well, wait a minute, you can't be in that imminent danger because you're eating. And that talks to your body also that, okay, maybe we're not in such peril right now, so let me calm the body. So those are just some de-escalating techniques. If you're having a flashback, a trigger, you're emotionally dysregulated, and you just need to calm your body. So hope you got something out of this class.